No time to take a nap right now, everyone, because it is classic mini racing coming up next, and we know how exciting this form of motorsport can be. The sun shining once again now on the Oulton Park circuit. We saw this morning just how quickly it dried. It wasn't quite as wet, I don't think, this afternoon as it was first thing this morning, so I'd expect maybe a dry track within the next half an hour or so. This is a 20-minute race scheduled for the Classic Minis, and the grid is as follows. It features a partially reversed grid based upon the result from race 1. So Tristan Beard has pole position, Will Burnham alongside, Paul Ogborn and David Burns together on row 2, then Dave Rees and David Kirkpatrick on row 3 together. Row 4 for Steve Rideout and Kelvin Fletcher, who completed the podium finishes in race number 1. Nevin Kirkpatrick and Chris Morgan, the top 2 from that first race, well, they will line up together on row number 5. Row 6, Graham Shepherd and James Bryan, with Nick Townsend and Chris Didcott on row 7. Braden Fletcher at the back. Braden Fletcher was disqualified from the race earlier on this morning for his car being underweight when they checked it afterwards. He has been allowed to start from the back of the grid for race 2, but it was a disqualification for the younger brother of Kelvin Fletcher, who will therefore have to start from the back. And in fact starts from the back potentially with a time penalty, question mark. Let me have a look at what it says on the results. Allowed to start at the back of the grid, no, following re-scrutineering, so no time penalty, but will be starting from the very back. So Tristan Beard gets drawn out on pole position. The top 10 finishers from race 1 reversed to give us the grid for race number 2. And the car's just being led now to the end of the pit lane, you can see there. So Tristan Beard's car at the front of that group has an opportunity now to start at the very front of the grid. And our top 3 from race 1 have some proper work to do now to come through from the back. And be interesting to see what Kelvin Fletcher, Nevin Kirkpatrick and Chris Morgan are able to do from the tail end of the top 10. This is where we should see some of that proper Classic Mini slipstreaming racing, I think, because they're going to really have to hustle their way through the pack and try and maybe work together a little bit in order to be able to do that. And, yeah, let's see what the fast guys from race 1 are able to achieve. Chris Morgan won by 1.3 seconds over Nevin Kirkpatrick. Kelvin Fletcher third, and really that was the story of the race, Kelvin versus Nevin for second position. Every time it looked like they were starting to reel in Chris Morgan out in front, they'd then start tripping over each other again, and that would allow the leader to maintain that margin. Kelvin Fletcher had second place a couple of times, but then said in his post-race interview with John Ratcliffe that he was missing the gear change slightly. I think he said he was going into 5th gear from second to 5th instead of second to 3rd. John, I forget what he said he was doing.
Trying to pull 4th, but was going into 2nd, and then having to bang it straight into 4th and then losing the momentum.
Very lucky, actually, not to do some damage to the gearbox and the engine doing that. That can quite easily cause some damage. I'm sure that he and the team will have had a look at that between races to make sure that it didn't do any lasting damage, and hopefully he'll be able to avoid doing the same sort of thing again this time around. There was Kelvin Fletcher going through anyway in his white and red car. He starts from 8th on the grid. So reverse grid, top 10 finishers from race 1 inverted. That guarantees us at least a few laps of action here, doesn't it?
Epic. I always love a reverse grid, so bring it on. This is going to be awesome stuff, isn't it? Of course, slightly longer than the other sprint races we've seen today. 20 minutes once again for these Classic Minis. But yeah, a couple of drivers who were a little bit further down the order in race 1, but still have some really good pace behind the wheel of their Classic Mini. So let's see if any of them are able to break away quickly and not have to get in contention with the drivers battling their way through from further down in the top 10. The likes of Chris Morgan, Nevin Kirkpatrick, Kelvin Fletcher, Stephen Rideout. Of course, you've already mentioned all of those, but plenty to watch in this one. Once again, 15 drivers on the grid for this race. And again, some tough conditions still. It is beginning to dry. We've still got a nice bit of sunshine now out at Oulton Park, which also thank you to the racing gods, because all of my interviews have been nice and dry, so that's been lovely. But driver's head, I'm going to commentator's curse myself, aren't I? It's going to throw it down in the last couple of races, but hey-ho. Track is drying, but you can see there on that shot with the glistening of the sunshine, the outsides of the circuit's still very damp, so going for moves, if you get squeezed all the way to the inside line, you might just find suddenly there's not a whole lot of grip for you.
That dry racing line, though, on that shot in particular, has double doubled in width since the start of the modified Ford race. That was only 15 minutes of running, probably, 25 minutes or so ago. So it is definitely better conditions now than we had at the start of that race, and I'd say largely dry. A few damp patches, I'm sure, underneath the trees over Clay Hill and into Druids, but the rest of the track seems more or less okay. So, a red car with the blue roof and the blue stripe for Tristan Beard on pole position. The yellow car of Will Burnham starts alongside. Then Paul Ogborn and David Burns together on row number 2. It's the back end of the top 10, though, that we really need to be keeping an eye out for. Those are the front runners from race 1. Maybe David Kirkpatrick has an opportunity at redemption here as well. Remember, David started on pole for the first race, having gone well in the wet qualifying session. Immediately slipped down to 5th in the early stages and never really was able to recover. So the Union flag liveried number 10 car could be one to keep an eye on as well. Caught a glimpse of him there as the camera panned around. Race number 2 then for the Classic Mini is about to burst into life. Red lights go on, out they go now, and away we go. Pretty even start, I'd say, from the front row men. Good start, I reckon that was for Chris Morgan further back, the race 1 winner, but it's absolutely neck and neck between the top 2. Beard on the inside, Burnham on the outside as they turn through Oulton corner. The momentum with the outside line gives Will Burnham the lead as they accelerate down the avenue for the first time. They're 3 wide further back. They need to get that sorted out before they arrive at Cascades, ideally. Will Burnham then with the early advantage, and is that David Kirkpatrick possibly coming up into second position? Yes, it was the Union flag car, up into P2 already.
Indeed, impressive start from him, and yeah, like you mentioned, brilliant breakaway off the line for your race 1 victor of Chris Morgan. This is already making up a few positions here in the opening laps. Well, your pole sitter then of Tristan Beard just dropping down into 3rd place, but still a very positive start to the race for him in this one, as the minis all sort themselves out through Ireland as we file on down through to Shell Oils for the first time. And the bright yellow car still leads us then. Will Burnham, nice breakaway, hung round that outside line and continues to hold on to it for now. Anyways, he's under a lot of pressure here as David makes his way through, doesn't even need to wait for the braking zone, he's got the lead.
Yes, he has, and just in the nick of time, because Nevin Kirkpatrick is up into 3rd look, so Nevin Kirkpatrick from 9th on the grid has made the best progress of the race 1 podium finishers, hasn't he? Up into 3rd and now going for 2nd as we go over hill top. Will Burnham will have some defending to do, doesn't cover the inside line, and Nevin Kirkpatrick will go through into 2nd position. Yes, moves ahead of the number 42 car. So it's a Kirkpatrick 1-2 at the moment. David ahead of Nevin, 3rd then for Burnham, and in 4th position, that is the race 1 winner, isn't it? Chris Morgan, the grey number 16 car, with Kelvin Fletcher a little bit detached from them currently in 5th place.
I love the visibility through the windscreen, so you can see exactly what Will Burnham was doing there in the cockpit, looking side to side, seeing where the driver was, and just allowing him the room there on the inside line, as there's the move up the inside already then. So 1 lap, but not even 1 full lap, and from 10th to 3rd already for your victor in race number 1. It's him versus the 2 Kirkpatricks here as we press on towards lap 2.
Yeah, well, this is interesting, though, because Chris in race 1 won that race because he made an early break and broke the toe by the end of lap 1. This time he's going to have to come up behind Nevin and David Kirkpatrick, find a way through and then try and get away. That will not be the easiest of things to do. Across the line come the Kirkpatricks, and are we about to have another lead change? I think we are. Nevin goes to the inside line into Old Hall corner, and Will manage to move ahead of David into the first turn. So a lap and a bit in the books. We've had 3 different leaders already, and it is Nevin Kirkpatrick then who finds his way to the head of the field. David, though, coming back at him maybe down the avenue here. Yes, pulls to the outside line, gets his nose ahead, and will he reclaim the advantage? No, Nevin having absolutely none of it, sides back through on the inside line, but this is all playing into the hands of the 3rd place man and the race 1 winner, Chris Morgan.
It is indeed, yeah, as these two squabble, he closes the gap up to them, but of course, as we always say in motorsport, it's one thing catching them up, it's an whole other thing getting past, and especially here in the minis, it's a whole other thing then breaking away at the sharp end. So let's see how this one plays out. Of course, a little bit more time on the clock for the drivers to do it, but at the moment, the Kirkpatrick family pretty happy in a 1-2 in this race for the moment. And now, for the first time in this one, it is, of course, Nevin who's leading David for the moment as they head down through into sector number 2 of this fantastic Oulton Park circuit. Interesting to see, of course, comparatively to the Fun Cups all over that big curb on the inside. The Minis giving it a nice big wide berth.
Yes, these cars are a little bit more fragile, aren't they, I suppose, than the much more modern Fun Cup cars, which are still being produced to this day. The Classic Minis, very much classics, as the name would suggest, historics, really. We see this era of Mini racing quite often in sort of 1960s touring car racing and doing great things there. This one-mate racing, though, this is where they really do come alive, isn't it? And we've got a good three-way battle for the win here, already starting to build up. Nevin Kirkpatrick hanging on to the advantage for now, but not able to get away from David, who we saw from qualifying had the pace, just never really got into his groove, you felt, in race one.
No, exactly, but yeah, looking to get a bit more groovy in this one, of course. These three starting to break away now as well, which is looking good. But I mean, if we get a bit more door-to-door action like we had a couple of laps ago, it won't be too long until the likes of Burnham, Fletcher, Rideout chase them down. And is this Stephen Rideout looking up the inside then? The number 7 making the move. It is indeed. That's Rideout through on Fletcher. He moves up into the top 5, and now he'll have his sights set on Will Burnham in 4th place. But look at that, Chris Morgan with the new fastest lap. Saying that, looking to the inside there was David Kirkpatrick down at T1, not able to get it done. But Chris Morgan, a 2:11.8. Both of the drivers ahead in the mid-212s.
Yeah, that was never likely to work, though, was it? It actually just robbed him of some mid-corner speed, and now he's got to get back on terms with David Kirkpatrick. Chris Morgan, of course, becoming an ever more ominous presence in his mirrors, as these three covered by just 7/10 of a second at the beginning of the lap. So very, very close indeed between our leading trio. Calvin Fletcher, meanwhile, in 4th position, about 3 seconds further back, and just not quite able to live with their pace. He's in the low 2-minute 13s, whereas the leaders are in the 2:12s, and in fact Chris Morgan in 3rd place at 2:11.8. To put that into perspective, the fastest lap from race 1 set by Calvin Fletcher was a 2:09.5, so we're still a couple of seconds away from that, showing the track conditions are not quite there yet.
Indeed, no, not quite, but definitely drying out lap on lap, isn't it, as the sun continues to shine here once more at Oulton Park. We have had all the different seasons today, haven't we? The rain has been ridiculous throughout the Fun Cup, but we are drying up once again, as now Chris Morgan looking a bit more feisty there in 3rd place, gets the car stopped as they head down through Hislops and into Knickerbrook once again. And again, through that camera shot, you can see that dry line a little bit more, not quite as wide there down in that section of the circuit, the dry line. So no moves made this time. They head up over Clay Hill once more and down towards Druids. Once again, will there be a thought of a move through here? It would be a bold one from either of them, and no, they stay single file for now anyway, but this is the closest that all these three drivers have been so far in this race as they carry the speed out of Druids and down through into Lodge once again. It was a little bit slidey through the right-hander with Druids there for Nevin. He's given a good exit to David, not quite good enough to put alongside though, and they stay as they were. This is, I was going to say classic mini racing, but it is classic mini racing. It's classic mini racing. This
classic mini racing. Worse to that effect. Anyway, it's good stuff. I'm enjoying it. David Kirkpatrick is back up alongside Nevin now as they head into Old Hall Corner. Outside line on the way in. Now, this might be better off for David than the inside approach from a lap ago, because wide in usually equals fast out, and I think he is up alongside Nevin as they head towards Dentons. In fact, he's gone through. Look at that. That was all about the momentum through Old Hall Corner, and he has managed to get by. So David Kirkpatrick to the lead again. But he ain't going to escape, is he? That much is fairly certain. What it does do, though, is it puts a car between himself and the race 1 winner, Chris Morgan. And that means that now it is Nevin Kirkpatrick who's in the difficult position of trying to attack and defend at the same time. David just needs to focus on staying in the race lead.
Yeah, it's not a nice place to be for Nevin. You're sort of having to think at 200% brain capacity, aren't you? Look at the driver ahead, look at the driver behind, also trying to focus on what you're doing behind the wheel. But for the moment, anyway, they are nicely keeping Chris Morgan behind, despite him having that fastest lap, despite how dominant he was in race number 1. As you said earlier, he had a nice breakaway in that one, was able to break the toe and press on ahead at the sharp end. This one proving a little bit more challenging, though. I think for the moment he's waiting in the wings and just seeing what the two Kirkpatricks do ahead of him, as maybe there's a bit of a inter-team and inter-family rivalry here between the two of them, and whether it boils over, well, Chris will be there to pick up the pieces. A big move down the inside there into his slots, back up the inside goes the 11 of Nevin, and back to the lead he goes.
There aren't many cars that you can really execute that overtake into Hislops, and I'd say Classic Minis are one of the very few, because they're so small and they're so good on the brakes. You can just sort of throw it up the inside and hope for the best, and that's exactly what Nevin did. But he is not going to escape. David Kirkpatrick already asking him some questions as they head into Druids, with 11.5 minutes left on the clock. Nevin Kirkpatrick, what he really wants to see is David and Chris Morgan now start to get into it in the battle for second position. That could allow him to do what Chris did in race 1 and break the toe. unless anyone can do that, I just don't see anyone escaping this battle, though. The three of them absolutely locked in combat, almost identical in pace, and the slipstream working well to keep them together.
Yeah, unless one of the drivers leaves this battle for whatever reason, off-track excursion, a mechanical issue, I think we're going to see these three stay absolutely nose to tail for the rest of the 11 minutes of this race. Outside line once again for David, for David indeed, down into the first corner, and again loses that momentum. Nevin holds on to the lead of the race. Spotted as well, of course, we saw Stephen Rideout get the move done on Will Burnham a lap or so ago. Will's just dropped behind Braden Fletcher now on the last lap, and Rideout now right on the back of Kelvin Fletcher for 4th place. So, of course, we're thoroughly enjoying this battle for the lead, but there are plenty of battles going on throughout the order as well. And that's the thing with these minis, of course, not very aerodynamically efficient. So once you do get in a squabble with drivers, you often stay as a nice big battle pack, and that might hold you up. And that's why we're maybe seeing a pack, a big gap, a pack, a big gap, and so on and so forth down the rest of the order.
Although, interestingly, a gap that is growing is 2nd to 3rd, isn't it? Chris Morgan hasn't had a great start to this lap. Maybe had a moment somewhere in the first couple of corners. He's in danger of losing touch with the leading two. Should be okay, given the pace that he's demonstrated so far today, but would quite like to see David Kirkpatrick have a go at recreating the move that Nevin made on him a lap ago at Hislop's. That would then allow Chris to close right back in, and David's close enough to think about it. Nevin knows it though, look, and he's just hovering over on the right hand side of the road. Then he comes over towards the racing line in the braking zone, but had to slightly compromise his line there into Hislop's, and that will just back them all up slightly. And just like that, Chris Morgan is almost right back with them.
Yep, didn't quite pull all the way across to open up the corner, did he? So lost a little bit of momentum there through Hislop's and Knickerbrook, but it doesn't seem to have hampered him too much. He stays in the lead of the race then. Less than 10 minutes now left to go on the clock in this one. We're over half race distance here in the set. Definitely now with the sunshine beaming down on it. Of course, always a section that stays pretty slippery once we have a bit of precipitation here at Oulton Park, but actually with the sunshine on it now, seems to be drying up pretty nicely through that section of the circuit. But like you mentioned, Chris, closing up, and once again, we're absolutely nose to tail for the lead here. Lovely exit out the final corner then for the number 10 of David Kirkpatrick. And again, the two Kirkpatricks go side by side down to T1. That was close, wasn't it?
That was almost wing mirror bashing close, wasn't it? But again, Nevin hangs on the way in. I was waiting for a really good exit there from David Kirkpatrick like he had a few laps ago. He has got a good exit, to be fair. He's back alongside Nevin on the outside line into Cascade. This can work. Nevin Kirkpatrick late on the brakes though, carries the speed into the corner, and this is now starting to really increase in intensity, and that's really hurt David Kirkpatrick. He runs wide at Cascades and opens the door potentially for Chris Morgan to get alongside. The momentum seems to lie with car number 10, and I think David will hold on to 2nd spot. The last thing these two want to do though is start really delaying each other and allowing Nevin Kirkpatrick any opportunity to get away.
I think David was just able to use the slipstream from Nevin there down the back straight as well, wasn't he? Just able to drag the car back ahead of Chris Morgan once again, and the three stay as they were. Yeah, slightly offline there down through Cascades, just lost the rear ever so slightly, lost that momentum. It just shows how much it kills your straight line speed in these classic minis, but then the slipstream brought it all straight back for him, so again moves back into 2nd place, and they stay as they were. One Kirkpatrick leading another, and Morgan still waiting in the wings, just not able to quite find a move here. He'll look to the outside though as we head down into Hislop's. Now he gets the use of the slipstream from the car number 11 just ahead of him, but can't quite get the move done.
No, David defended that one successfully. But interesting, isn't it, that the two Kirkpatricks have swapped positions so many times in this race, and yet the race one winner, Chris Morgan, hasn't been able to breach their defences, not even once. So sitting sort of frustratedly in 3rd position is Morgan. And what is it going to take for him to find a way through? He's already got the fastest lap. A 2-minute 10.6 is about a 10th quicker than anything either of the Kirkpatricks have done. He's had a nice little double slipstream, of course, for much of this race, which will have been helping him. But to get past David Kirkpatrick is going to take a bit of an aggressive move, you feel. That might be a risk that he doesn't want to take. It might also be the thing that allows Nevin to get away in front. So Chris Morgan's got to play this quite carefully, and maybe just sort of hope that the two Kirkpatricks start battling again, and that maybe this time he can take advantage. Not quite side by side this time over the line, but only a mini's length or so between the two Kirkpatricks as they begin lap number 7.
Indeed, yet still as they were then, as we quickly look back to the battle in behind as well. Stephen Rideout has now made the place on Kelvin Fletcher. That's happened over the last couple of laps or so. but they still remain about 7 seconds off of your leading trio, as there they continue on down through Cascades. Now, of course, they'll be using the slipstream together, Will Rideout and Fletcher, but still, really, we need some much more heavy battling between the top three to see these two start to get involved. Sadly for them, I think the lofty heights of fourth are all they can hope for in this one, unless it all goes wrong for the three ahead. Not to commentators, Kirsten, but just saying.
I've seen it happen. I have definitely seen it happen. A bit mystifying, really, the lack of pace from Kelvin Fletcher in this one. He was the fastest man on track in race one on his return to Classic Mini Racing, but has had a bit of a lack of pace in this one. Never really got away with the leaders, but the reverse grid didn't work out in his favour, really. And he has just lost touch with them, doesn't really have them to use as a reference either. And so maybe isn't quite extracting the maximum potential from his number 12 Mini. Here comes Chris Morgan, good exit from Britain's Look, pulls alongside David Kirkpatrick. Is he going to go through here at Hislops? It would be a brave move to make round the outside. That doesn't work. And again, David Kirkpatrick compromises the line, goes in tight. And I was going to say that loses him some time through Hislops. He actually recovered from that well, but yeah, Nevin just a length or so further ahead of him now than he was a few moments ago.
Indeed, yeah, this is probably one of the bigger gaps we've seen so far in this race between these three, isn't it? It is still Chris Morgan with the ultimate pace, though, in this one. 2 minutes 10.6 versus the two Kirkpatricks, both on a 2 minute 10.7 fastest lap in this race. Well, this is the opportunity for Nevin to try and open this one up. But again, he's got no slipstream to work with, whereas the two behind very much do. So I can only imagine that gap will close back up to what it was only a few moments ago, as we've got less than 5 minutes left to go in this one. Already 3/4 of the race distance completed. Well, opportunities here for Chris Morgan to make it 2 wins from 2, quickly dwindling.
Very much so, yes. This is going to be a tough battle to the flag. Just under a second between the three of them. As behind, look, Kelvin Fletcher's got someone to play with now, and he's quite enjoying this battle with Steve Rideout. Peeks to the inside into Old Hall Corner, and Kelvin Fletcher will manage to get through. Can Steve Rideout, though, now get a better exit and maybe reclaim that fourth place on the way into Cascades? He's thinking about it, but I think Kelvin's got that one covered. So Kelvin Fletcher manages to wriggle back through into fourth position. But again, that's about the best that either of these drivers, I think, can hope to get out of this race now with 4 minutes left on the clock. Kelvin will have to just sort of weave over to the middle of the road there to cover from Steve Rideout. Does so successfully, though. And they stay in the same order. The leaders, meanwhile, will be coming out of the Shell hairpin. There they go. And it is Nevin, David and Chris in the order. Nevin Kirkpatrick ahead of David Kirkpatrick. Chris Morgan sitting in third. And yeah, hard to see really where that decisive move is going to come from here, because I think Nevin now has just built this margin and he's maintaining it quite nicely.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, in my words from earlier, he's actually maintaining this gap really well, isn't he, Nevin? He's doing a great job. That was a lovely move, though, earlier on from Kelvin Fletcher to retake fourth place. That was a textbook mini move there, getting it through, not losing too much momentum and pressing on really well. Those two now have dropped just over 8 seconds off of the back of this leading trio. So another second loss for those two, but they were battling, so understandably so. But yes, Nevin doing a great job here to keep the rest of the two in this squabble at arm's length. I've also got to say, I absolutely love having the names on the front grille. You can see there, Nev for your race leader. We also had Rideout across the grille, Stevens' car. That does look awesome. And I've got to point out as well, new fastest lap of the race on the last lap from Nevin Kirkpatrick. So that would have helped in building that gap. And now it does look as though David's attention is turning to Chris behind.
Yeah, very impressive lap time that for Nevin without a slipstream, although makes a bit of a mistake at Lodge, and just like that, they're all back together. So Nevin Kirkpatrick with a little error as he was trying to break the toe. 2 laps to go, and David Kirkpatrick's right on him. We've got a grandstand finish in the offing here. David goes to the outside of Old Hall. He likes this move, doesn't he? Get the switch back, carry the speed down the hill. We're hearing there was a sprinkle of rain at Druids. That perhaps had something to do with that moment for Nevin Kirkpatrick. Right now, though, that's the last of his worries. Through goes David, bullies his way through at Denton's. He's made that move a few times in this race, tees himself up for a good run out of Old Hall, makes the move down the avenue, and now he's got to try and defend the lead from Nevin as we head down the Lakeside Straight. Nevin will get the slipstream, but I don't think he's quite close enough to get to the inside. Maybe he is. He's there, sort of. They almost lean on each other. Nevin sideways. David's on the grass as they come out of Ireland then. Did he manage to save that? Fingers crossed. Do all three of them appear into the shot at Shell? 1, 2, 3. Yes, they're all still there, and it's Nevin Kirkpatrick back to the front.
Well, I ate my words, and then I'm going to quickly spit them back out again, because immediately that gap was closed, wasn't it? Great battling between the two Kirkpatricks, but Nevin, what an aggressive move there to the inside of Ireland. My goodness, there had to be a lot of trust between the two of them there, and as you say, dropping the rear right on the grass, I thought surely that car was going to go pirouetting towards the barriers, but no, well held, sir. David holds it, and not only holds the car, he holds second place as well. Fair play.
Yes, now he's caught Nevin once. Can he do it again? That was mistake assisted though, wasn't it, from Nevin when he ran wide at Lodge a lap ago. David's had a really good run through the Hislop chicane. Nevin's car looks a bit loose, doesn't it? Sliding again out of Knickerbrook corner as he really now starts to ask an awful lot of those very skinny tyres. He is having to extract the maximum potential out of that car and every part of it in order to keep David Kirkpatrick at arm's length. Through Druids they go. No sign of rain at the moment, although Nevin was a little bit more committed than the two drivers behind him, I'd say there, so he certainly wasn't feeling the need to back off for inclement weather. Can he stay there for one more lap?
Indeed, let's wait and see then on to the last lap. They are about to go again to highlight how great it is to be able to see the drivers behind the wheel there. Saw Nevin bouncing through Druid's corner there as the car just moved around underneath him, but he held it well and he holds the lead then as we head on to the final lap of race number 2 here. I mean, to be fair, I don't think the camera ops were lying. Look at the rain on our commentary box window. It is starting to pitter-patter once more. Will that come into play here on the final lap?
Quite possible. This is where David's been strong all race. Look again, pulls to the right-hand side of the road through Denton's, but he doesn't have his nose ahead this time into Cascades, and so Nevin Kirkpatrick will hold on to the place for now. Does that give David, though, the opportunity to get the toe down the Lakeside Straight? Well, the answer is no. He didn't get off the corner well enough, really, and Nevin Kirkpatrick, whilst the gap is closing, I don't think will feel the need to defend into Ireland. Well, maybe. David was almost there, and felt a spot of retaliation on the cards almost. I thought he was going to try and repay the favour and repeat what Nevin did to him a lap ago. They stay in the same order though. Nevin Kirkpatrick, David Kirkpatrick, the race one winner Chris Morgan in third. Kelvin Fletcher, by the way, still narrowly ahead of Steve Rideout, I can tell you, for fourth position. There they are in the back of shot, but all attention now lies with the leading three. Half a lap to go through the Brent chicane. David Kirkpatrick is as close as ever, heading over hilltop. He'll get a little bit of a slipstream over the top of the hill. And we've seen some overtakes into Hislops already. Nevin Kirkpatrick hooks the inside line as they drop downhill, and then again meanders over to the middle of the road on the way into the corner. Don't count out Chris Morgan from this either, the third place man looking for the double victory. Round Knickerbrook for the final time. Accelerate up through Clay Hill, through the gears towards Druids. It's all going to boil down to who gets off Druids the best and who's the bravest on the brakes into Lodge. At the moment, second and third places are closer than first and second. Is that going to let Nevin Kirkpatrick off the hook? I think it might. Higgles Morgan to the inside of Druids. They almost lean on each other to Chris and David, and that has absolutely handed the advantage to Nevin Kirkpatrick now. There's no way that David Kirkpatrick will get close enough to challenge now at Lodge, and instead he has to turn all of his attention now from attack to defence to try and keep the fired up Chris Morgan at bay. Out of Lodge corner they go then, and Nevin Kirkpatrick is going to go one better than he did in race 1. It's victory in race number 2 for the Classic Minis for Nevin Kirkpatrick. Second place goes to David Kirkpatrick, third to Chris Morgan after a brilliant last lap battle between the three of them. Is it Kelvin Fletcher fourth? Just about. Look at that. That was close between Kelvin and Steve Rideout. Rideout was only a tenth and a bit adrift of fourth position at the flag, and there are other good battles going on further back. This is David Burns for 8th position, trying to defend from Dave Rees. So don't be fooled into thinking that you have to be right at the front of the field to have a good battle. There are some good scraps going on up and down the order, and Dave Rees is going to have one more chance here to the outside at Lodge. He'll look again to get that good exit from the corner and maybe drag up alongside David Burns on the run to the flag. He might just get there, you know. This is going to be almost a dead heat at the line, and it will be too close to call, I reckon. The timing screen says that it was Burns by 47 thousandths of a second over Dave Rees in the squabble for 8th position. Fantastic racing up and down the order, as you would expect from Classic Mini Racing, and great to have them back on board with the BRSCC. Nevin Kirkpatrick managing to claim the win, and he'll be absolutely delighted with that. So Nevin Kirkpatrick victorious. David comes home in second ahead of Chris Morgan third. Kelvin Fletcher in fourth position, just missing out on the podium this time, but just keeping Steve Rideout at bay to the flag. Steve ends up fifth ahead of Braden Fletcher, sixth Will Burnham, seventh David Burns, eighth narrowly, as I said, by just 47 thousandths of a second over Dave Rees, with James Bryan completing the top 10. Paul Ogborn was 11th ahead of Tristan Beard and Chris Didcott, Graham Shepherd in 14th, and we did get all 15 starters to the flag, I'm delighted to say, with Nick Townend in 15th place and last. So